Guy named Wallace Rice, the guy who made the rules for the contest.
Yay, it's moving.
I guess what I'm saying is Chicago is not corrupt at all. Totally above board.
Yeah.
Certainly was corrupt. Corrupt or not, Wallace Rice made a pretty darn good flag. In 2004, a public survey of the design of 150 different city flags across the United States led to the Chicago flag placing second. Second only to the coincidentally very similar Washington, D.C. flag, which has a white background. You know this already? Yeah, 2 horizontal stripes, just like our flag, and 3 red stars, just like our flag. Your flag came after our flag. I'm pretty sure you copied. Are you from D.C.? All right. Do you know what your flag means? All right, great. City pride right there.
Nice.
To the right above us, you've got a tall steel and glass skyscraper built in 2009. It's called Trump Tower. It's the second tallest building in the city. Give it a few years, it'll soon be the third tallest building in the city. About a quarter mile behind us, there's a parking lot that will soon be home to the new second tallest building in the city. They have yet to start building it, but both that new second tallest and the current one to the right were designed by the same guy, an architect so famous he's sometimes called a star architect. His name is Adrian Smith. Next building on the right, also done by a super famous architect. That black steel and glass box was designed by one of the most famous architects in the world in the 20th century. His name, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. That building is the style he pioneered. It's called the Modernist style. If you're not a big fan of that style, you're not alone. Mies van der Rohe described the style with 3 simple words: less is more. Makes some very simple buildings. But after decades of buildings that look just like that from him, architects criticized him using his own words against it. They said, Mies, less is a bore. I kind of agree, but that was a very important style in the 20th century. Basically, any steel and glass building you know of in the world today can be traced back to Mies van der Rohe. But modernism can also come in a different flavor. It can look like this, concrete and round. These 2 modernist buildings are from 1963. They're called Marina City. Even if you're not from Chicago, you may have seen images of these buildings. They're some of our most recognizable in the city. Marina City is called that because you can see there's a marina at the bottom, but Chicagoans sometimes call the buildings the Corn Cob Towers due to their obvious resemblance to tomatoes. They're also called Marina City because they were a city within a city when they were first built. There are so many amenities inside the structures. Just as a quick overview of that, the residents all used to have access to that marina. Restaurants, 13 floors of parking per building, a bank, a dry cleaners, a grocery store, a movie theater, a bowling alley, a health club, a swimming pool, a barber shop, a salon, a drugstore, a miniature golf course, a bar, and at one point they had their own ice skating rink. The ice skating rink lasted until the 1990s when it had to be closed after somebody tragically skated over the edge of the structure. I'm just kidding. You're all taking this tour so seriously. They did have an ice skating rink. I want to point out this restaurant here on the right. This just opened last year after 2 years of construction. Sounds like they had an awful lot of work to do. Before they made it into a restaurant, that area was home to a restaurant. And it took 2 years to make a restaurant into a restaurant. The Empire State Building was built in 1 year. In French.
Oh, that's nice.
On the right, oldest building on the main branch, this reddish-brown brick building you see is from 1914, known as the Reed Murdock Center. The building gives you a good idea of what the area's river architecture used to look like back when Chicago was a big industrial city. The building is one of just 2 of the last remaining old warehouses on the main branch, though it no longer is actually a warehouse, it's now office space. Most of the buildings around here are offices. Next building we'll see is an office tower built in 2009. It's this green glass structure, very tall and sleek. It's also very environmentally friendly. If it means anything to you, the building is LEED Platinum certified. That's a gradation system for the environmental friendliness of buildings. This is so friendly for 3 big reasons. For one, it was built of almost all recycled materials that were locally sourced. And while you can't see it, there's also a rooftop garden, and the building has a system that takes in the water from the Chicago River, uses it to create cool air for the building's air conditioning. That was a very innovative process in 2009. Today that process is illegal. You're wondering why? It's because the water comes back into the river hotter than when it went into the building in the first place. That interferes with the ecosystem. Oh, and the building system sucks up fish from the river like a fish vacuum. Yeah. You two guys were like, wow, that system is cool. That's good for the environment. No, it's not. To our right above us, you got a giant structure. Boy, hard to miss this building. Perhaps that's because it was the largest building in the world when it was built in 1931.
Wow.
The building is called the Merchandise Mart, and it's still pretty big. It left the top 50 largest in the world just a few years ago, but the building covers 2 entire city blocks. That's a 5-acre footprint. It is so large it had its own zip code up until about 12 years ago.
Wow.
60654. It's the other one of the old warehouses on the main branch. Today the building is also mostly office space. We'll see this view again behind us once we turn around later, but I always want to point out this view. Staring down the main branch, just a beautiful view. Ooh, that breeze feels lovely, does it not?
Yeah.
To our right, let's see, I guess I could point out some of the new construction around here. Maybe it's better to say with the time we have that there's been so much construction in this area where all 3 branches of the river come together the last 5 years or so, that there's really honestly too much to mention. So maybe I'll skip ahead and talk about perhaps the coolest new building in the city. It's the building that's straight ahead of us right now. If you don't see why it's so cool, just check out the bottom of the building. You'll see the architects who designed it have never played Jenga. Widest part of the bottom of that building is only 40 feet wide. This boat is about 32 feet wide. So this is only a few feet wider than the boat. Yet the tower is 800 feet tall. You would think a building with a narrow base like that would have a problem with swaying. It doesn't, amazingly, because of what's inside the top floor of the building. Can't see it, of course, but inside that top floor is a 160,000 gallon pool of water. When the building sways one direction, the water wants to stay where it was, so it acts as a counterweight, reducing the sway. That's called a tuned mass damper system. The building's foundation is so narrow in the first place just because of what's on the other side of it. There are train tracks over there that left the developers with a very narrow piece of land to work with. They obviously made it work. The building is an office building called 150 North Riverside, built 3 years ago. Those train tracks that are on the right, interfering with the bottom of this building, do continue ahead underneath the next building on the right. So how do you build a building over railroad tracks? Well, the short answer,